Last week in the Texas shootout, we had the closest finish in IRL history and a new winner in Glasgow-born Jeff Ward. It was his and Ganassi Racing's first IRL win. But only bad luck robbed young Thomas Scheckter of a rookie victory. However, it's Team Penske's Helio Castroneves that still leads the title chase, but any one of a dozen drivers could take the laurels today. This week, we're in picturesque Colorado. We're at the Pikes Peak International Raceway for the Radisson Indy 225. There's no question about it. The Indy Racing League is now a hugely competitive series, and as the big kart teams move in, some of the smaller IRL outfits are finding the going tough. Even reigning IRL champion Sam Hornish Jr. has been going through a difficult patch, but he'll be out to make amends on a track which has brought him success in the past. To discuss this and plenty more besides, I'm joined in the studio by Paul Cherry, former Managing Director of Sigma Motorsport, and Christian Colby, a regular on US Ovals last year. Christian, this Pikes Peak track is at the highest altitude of just about any track in America. We hear about slipstreaming being a major thing that we need to see in the oval racing. What's it going to be like for the drivers at this altitude?
I mean, the altitude is really not going to help the racing. It's going to make a bit of a problem slipstreaming by. The air's going to be so thin up there that to get a slipstream up and get up the inside of someone is going to be extremely difficult. So to get by someone, they've really got to make a real racing manoeuvre rather than a slipstream. It's going to make racing really, really interesting and maybe cause a few accidents along the way.
Paul, if I go back to my old bike racing days when it was black and white, if we went high up, we had no power in the motors at all. Is that going to be a big difference here as well? Because these are quite low-powered machines anyway, aren't they?
Yes, for sure it'll make a difference, Keith. The altitude affects a normally aspirated engine much more than the turbocharged engine. However, with the electronics in these days, you can compensate a little bit, but it's going to be the same for everybody.
Christian, in recent weeks we've heard team managers talk about it's the last sort of few laps that count in an IRL race, not the early laps in it. The strategy as well building up to that. Thomas Scheckter's a man that doesn't seem to worry too much about strategy. It doesn't really suit a young man and a young charger, does it, to be... How do you keep a harness on a young man like you guys?
I mean, for a team manager it's very difficult. As a young person you want to go up and you want to prove a point. You want to win that race, and that's what you've grown up and that's what you've grown up to learn. And at the end of the day, the long race is to call the championship, and that's what you need to try and learn to go for. But once you put the visor down, the engine revs up, the red mist sets in, so to speak, and it does create a few accidents. And Thomas has made a few accidents, but he's been blindingly fast, and his first victory is just around the corner, I'm sure.
He was unlucky last week, wasn't he?
He was very unlucky, and I felt he had control of the 500 and was unlucky to lose it. He made a mistake, and he's paid very, very dear for his mistakes, but I'm sure he'll come good.
And he gets another chance tonight. Well, thanks very much. Plenty more comment from both of you later, but the cars are already out on the track, so we can cross to Colorado and join our commentators. Former Indy 500 racer Larry Rice and Gary Lee.
Front row. Jill DeFerrin with his second pole of the year. His teammate and Indy victor is alongside. The second row, Felipe Giafoni, and last year's champion Sam Hornish Jr. In row 3, Scott Sharp and last week's winner Jeff Ward. In the fourth row on the inside, it's Robbie Buell with Infinity Power, the leading rookie so far this season. Laurent Redon also with Infinity Power. In the fifth row, Thomas Scheckter in 52 and a former winner here and champion Buddy Lazier in 91. Al Unser Jr. finished a close second last week, and Mark Dismore's first ride this year for John Menard. Ayrton Dare for A.J. Foyt in 14 and Eddie Cheever in 51. In the eighth row, it's Alex Barron and Greg Ray also driving for the legendary A.J. Foyt. In the ninth row on the inside, Richie Hearn. Outside, Anthony Lazzaro with a new number and different ride this week for him. 31 is George Mack and Robbie McGee back from an injury sustained in practice at Indianapolis in this race. Then it's Shigeaki Hattori in number 12, John Herb in 16, and rounding out the field, Billy Boat in car number 98.
There it is, and that's the lineup as it comes up in just a few moments indeed. Now, Penske seem to be ruling the front row, ruling the roost in IRL at the moment, joined us this year for the full time. Obviously on it, aren't they, at this particular track?
Without a doubt. I mean, they've been on it every race this year in the typical Penske fashion. They've come in, they've assessed the situation and got their act together straight away.
Christian, Sam Hornish Jr., I mean, defending IRL champion, he's had his fair share of problems this year. He's just not quite been on the pace, but fourth place on the grid today, maybe this will be the place where he turns it.
He's a hard racer as well. This race is probably going to suit him. He's strong, he's fast, and I think he wants to prove a point, you know, that last year wasn't a fluke. It's been unlucky, like you said, so far, but I'm sure he'll be right up there. He's certainly quick enough for it.
Well, all three of us like to talk about motorbikes, and of course I can't get away without saying last week's winner, Jeff Ward, by the closest margin ever in an IRL race, ex-motocrosser, AMA champion. He's there again, isn't he? Right there on the grid, 6th place. I mean, can Jeff Ward really do it? It was his 51st IRL race before he got his first ever win. I didn't think he was ever going to actually do it.
I think the thing with winning is, and Christian will be the one to tell us this, once you've had one, the rest come quite naturally because you know exactly how to do it. And it'll be interesting to see. But Jeff's a tough competitor across the board. He'll recognise if he can take points, it'll mean good championship position.
Well, we've got plenty to talk about during the course of the evening, there's no doubt about that. Let's cross now to the track and pick up the action.
And as we come back to Pikes Peak International Raceway, Gary Lee, Larry Rice with the coverage of the Pikes Peak Indy 225. The command was given. The cars have fired, and they're pulling off that pit lane onto that apron. And there's a look at part of the Penske juggernaut. Gilles de Ferran starting first, his second pole position of the year. He's now second in the point standings.
Well, he's certainly one of the guys that should have won a race by now. He's had several opportunities. He ran out of fuel one time. Another time he lost a wheel in Indianapolis. So he's had several opportunities to win the race, but he has not done so yet. And I'm sure he's feeling like the Penske guy that is due, and it's his turn to win. Here we take a look at Felipe Giaffoni, another guy who is very, very strong right now. Ever since Indianapolis, he has been extremely strong, and he also is on the verge of winning.
Sam Hornish in the first 3 races of the season had 2 wins and a third. Then the bottom kind of dropped out. He had a couple of crashes, stuck his nose in a couple of spots where he would admit that he probably should not have in retrospect, but he's a competitive guy and he wants to be out in front.
Well, you know, he's gotten away with some things in the past. The luck just kind of caught up with him, and unfortunately just caught up with him a couple of races in a row. That's a very good team, though.
Scott Sharp will be starting inside the 3rd row. He has a victory, and now we go on board with the number 2 car of Mark Dismore. And Mark will be starting in the 12th position outside row 6, his first ride for Team Menard. There's a look from the number 4 car. That is the Pennzoil Pedigo entry of Sam Hornish and the Pennzoil Panther team. He was last year's seasonal champion, the youngest ever to win an open-wheeled national championship. And there is little Al Unser Jr., a 2-time winner of the Indy 500, was second last week by 11 thousandths of a second.
He took that very well, too, believe me. That was not an easy one to lose.
Scott Sharp, he'll be starting 5th today. Now the flag has been furled. The shaft was held up, indicating 1 lap to go. And there's a look at Jeff Ward. He'll be starting 6th. Picked up his first Indy Racing League victory just a week ago. And we've had a number of races decided on the final lap, and in some cases, like last week, the final turn. It was the only lap he led all race.
There'll never be a victory with any shorter time led, believe me.
It's going to be a warm day here today, not as windy as it was yesterday. The elevation, as we talked about, will play a role in setting up the chassis with the downforce and the horsepower, and we'll talk about that throughout the broadcast as you go back on board with Mark Dismore. Now they're lined up 2 by 2. The Penske, good shot back at the base car. The Penske drivers will bring them around. Watch for the green flag. There it is. It was a late green.
That was a good start, too. The 3rd row was back a little ways, but everybody was at least lined up 2 by 2 this time.
See how wide this racetrack is?
Going into turn 1, it's an extremely wide racetrack. You got a lot of room. Coming off of turn 2, right there is probably the tightest part of the racetrack.
Well, we call this an oval. Some people call it a tri-oval, but it is fast. The qualifying speed over 177 miles an hour for Gilles de Ferran. And the Penske cars now run 1-2.
Yeah, already Castroneves is all over the back of Gilles de Ferran. Those 2 cars running 1-2, and Giaffoni right behind them and giving up no room at all.
Castroneves not sure he'll be flying back to Indianapolis tonight because that appeals hearing from Team Green will be conducted tomorrow in the office of Tony George at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And Ferran says, or Castroneves says, he will be there if needed. But I suspect he'll be in Indy tomorrow, no matter what happens here this afternoon. Looking back at 3rd place, that's the Hollywood car, the 21 car of Felipe Giaffoni. Sam Hornish is 4, so they're running in the order they started.
Yeah, pretty much those first 5 or 6 cars have fallen into line. They're just following each other. It's very important at this racetrack not to lose a lap. So right now, the main concern of the guys probably in the first 10 are just to keep up with the leaders and not lose a lap early in the race. The guys who are in the back of the field, some of these guys like Eddie Cheever, who started 14th, and Mark Dismal, who started 13th, they've got to be a little more concerned, and they've got to kind of get up there a little faster.
It looks like Radisson is on the move. In fact, he is being shown now from timing and scoring in 5th position. He began 8th, and he has been a very pleasant surprise with the Indy Racing League this season.
He's probably surprised me more than anybody, mostly because I didn't know his history very much. I didn't know really what all he had done, but he's been very good. I saw him run a couple of times last year, and he ran quite well last year, too.
Well, Formula One test driver for a couple of different teams, and really became disenfranchised with the chances of moving up and getting a regular ride with the Formula One. So he moved over here to America and has made a name for himself now on the ovals. And right now he's up there in 5th position. Jeff Ward is 6th. Sharp is 7th. Then it's Buell, Lazier, Al Unser Jr. rounding out the top 10.
You can see that Harnish has now moved into 3rd spot as Castroneves is falling farther and farther behind. Now Harnish is up there challenging Castroneves for that 2nd position.
Well, keep in mind, this is the 2nd race. He went high there.
He got way wide. He got up in the gray, and he got way out of the throttle, and that's something you don't want to do here. You get up in that gray, you get into what they call the marbles, the loose rubber that's up there, and it's very easy just to push right up and into the wall, and he got away with one right there.
Good onboard camera shot there as you rode through that 10-degree banking in the corners. Sam again rides a little higher than most of the drivers on the racetrack, and occasionally that will get him in trouble.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a bit of a push. The front end's pushing out on him, and he's running it to the limit even with that push.
Well, he's riding back there in 3rd position. 4th is still Giafoni, then Radisson is 5th, and then Jeff Ward is in the 6th position. It was just announced this week that, or I guess it was last week, that Harnish would have a teammate late in the season. And Danny Weldon, former 2000 champion, will be joining them for at least 2 races this season and hopefully a full ride next season. So, after 9 laps, Gilles de Ferran continues to set the pace. You drive into the 10-degree banking. The straightaways are also banked slightly here as well. And this is a very fast racetrack. In fact, the front stretch is 7 degrees, the back stretch 3 degrees. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that certainly enhances the speed here because the overall speed average for the pole over 177 miles an hour.
Yeah, and that front straightaway is not a straightaway. They call it a trioval. It really is not a trioval. That's just one big corner up there. It's like a D shape more than it is a trioval. The back straightaway where they are right now is really the only straight place on the racetrack.
Well, already John Herb is a lap back in number 16, so the lapping process has begun with 12 laps completed.
We're watching Jeff Ward and Scott Sharp. Scott Sharp in the yellow car trying to get around Ward.
Back riding with Sam Harnish again. As we indicated, he was off to a very, very good start in the season, winning the first race. In the first 3 races, he had 2 wins and a 3rd, but the last few races, he's had some difficulty.
Right, and you can see right there as he follows Castroneves into the corner, it takes some of the air off that front wing. That's the reason he's pushing, and he has to get out of the throttle and give that front end a chance to get some air.
Well, when you talk about taking air off the front wing, I mean the thin air out here reduces the downforce by how many pounds are they saying?
It's about 600 pounds of downforce that it takes away. So it does take it takes away a lot of the downforce, but it takes away some of the horsepower as well.
And the horsepower is about 100 down, plus the engine runs hotter with the thinner air.
Yeah, it certainly does. So all those things are a big factor. And now
that's the 54 car of Robbie McGee. McGee sustained an injury at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He had been cleared to drive but could not put a program together to qualify, and he's hooked up with Greg Beck this weekend.
Scott Sharp just made the pass on Ward as they're once again going around the lap car of John Herb. Now then Ward got out of the throttle a little bit, lost some ground to him.
Well, we've talked to the drivers this weekend, and they always indicate at this racetrack, anytime you're on a mile track, no matter how fast the overall speed is, traffic is going to be a problem. Whether it's here, it's at Richmond, it's at Phoenix, traffic is going to be an issue. Riding along now with Jeff Ford, the winner 1 week ago in Texas. He is now in the 7th position in the Target Chip Ganassi number 9. And you see the banking along the front straightaway there as they head in the 10-degree banking on the corners. And there's the George Mack 310 entry. Sandwiched right now between the 2 leaders.
And Castroneves had to get out of the throttle big time because Mack was in the way. He ran right up on him.
Hornish.
And that's Hornish right behind him. George Mack, look at that.
Contact between second place, Castroneves, and George Mack. Mack, the rookie out of Los Angeles.
And Mack did crash yesterday. He's the only car that did make some contact with the wall. It was not heavy contact, was not a lot of damage, but that resulted in him not getting as much practice time, and he did not qualify all that well. Boy, that time as Hornish went around him, he slid right up in front of him. Mack had to give him room as well. Now then, you can see the leaders in heavy traffic. Traffic always a problem, as you just said, Gary, when you come to these 1-mile racetracks. Phoenix, Richmond, all these little racetracks, these little bull rings as we call them, very, very important to be able to get through traffic.
When you take a look at the 7 car of Al Unser Jr. pulling up behind the 24 of
that's
Robbie Buell.
That's a battle for 8th and 9th as those 2 cars running out there. Unser is one of the guys who started back in the field a little bit. We expect him to come up through there fairly quickly. He's always seems to be around at the end. He's not always the guy that you talk about most of the race, but when it comes near the end of the race, he's always there.
Well, the A.J. Foyt car is now placed a lap down. That was Greg Ray. So Ray joined Foyt, signed a 2-year contract, and I tell you what, that program has just not come together.
No, it certainly hasn't. They just have not gelled at all, and Greg Ray's having a heck of a time. Remember, he's won twice at this racetrack, and obviously struggling big time here today.
Well, he's won the most poles with 13, so he's a fast driver, but the program has just not come together with A.J. and Harris and Greg Ray. As you watch right now, that battle up in front, not really a battle, it's about status quo between first and second. Those teammates are smart enough, they're not going to endanger their equipment by getting too close.
Not this early stage in the race. These guys are, this is not Formula One. These guys are going to battle each other if it comes down to the last lap. But they will not do it this early in the race. It just does not pay to go out there and take big chances this early in an event.
Well, right now, the average race speed is about 10 miles an hour off what they qualified.
Well, and that's normal. There's a completely different setup on the car for qualifying than there is for the race. You have to carry a lot more fuel. You have to dial in a lot more downforce because you have to be able to run in traffic. When you're out there by yourself, you don't have to have a lot of downforce. So you can just go out there and run the car very free.
Well, also, this was a new racetrack really over where they practiced earlier today because we've had a race already. The USAC Silver Crown cars were out there. Brian Tyler won that event, so there was some rubber laid down the racetrack. The racetrack had changed since they practiced this morning. Plus, the temperature's a lot hotter now.
Well, that's the big thing, the wind and the temperature. That's the biggest difference at this racetrack. The temperature changes, the wind changes direction. Those 2 things make a huge difference in gearing and how the race car is set up and how you have to run the race car.
Well, you see 199 laps to go. The last 6 races at this track have been 200-mile events. They added 25 laps to this event this season. You take a look at the top 2 and just out of picture right there coming into your screen, the yellow number 4, Sam Hornish Jr. needs a good finish here today. He needs to get that program back on course.
Yeah, I mean, that team is a very good team. They know they're a very good team, but it would certainly boost their confidence to come out here and run good. And you can see right now what a huge lead these 3 have on the rest of the field. That's Giaffoni in 4th place, and he's a good ways back.
Yeah, but look at this. There's the battle for 4th right there. We got a car slowing down. That looks like the number 24 of Robbie Buell. Buell with the Infinity power. It was just announced this week that Infinity will focus on that Infinity Pro Series, the support series coming up later this season, and will drop out of the Indy Racing League. So next year we'll see the power plants provided by Chevrolet, Honda, and Toyota. So it looks like, well, we won't speculate at this point, but it's a drivetrain problem.
Yeah, it looks like some sort of a problem, and they threw the yellow right away, and so everybody's going to have a chance here. We'll see 28 laps if they're going to make a pit stop or they're going to go on.
So the yellow is out after 28 circuits. Well, we'll see if Robbie can make it back to the pit area as he coasts off the corner. We know the Infinity can really develop the horsepower. In fact, he came just within a whisker of winning the pole position at this past May's Indianapolis 500 and was very disappointed he didn't get that pole. But The downside, the Achilles heel, has been longevity with these Infinity power plants.
Well, they've really solved that problem an awful lot, but you can see right now they're pulling the cowling off of the hood area, so it does appear that it's an engine problem. They're looking in that area instead of the rear end, so I'm guessing that you're probably right. The engine has had a problem in this car right now.
And this was the team that gave Sarah Fisher the ride at the Indy Motor Speedway with a good qualifying effort. Her race day was not all that spectacular, and they'd hoped to have enough financial support to run her all season long. That has not happened, so she once again is a spectator as the crew goes to work on the rear of that car.
Well, Rick Treadway's another guy who's not here this weekend because of problems securing sponsorship. So it's a huge problem in all the motorsports right now. The economy and everything makes it very difficult to come up with the sponsorship and the money needed to run these cars.
Well, another driver that actually led a lap last week, Shigeaki Tori, who runs for a team that is based out of, well, now Indianapolis, but the team originally is from the Denver area. And that was Bradley Motorsports, and there's some questions whether they will continue following this weekend's activity. Now you see the cowling off the car, and we're hearing that there may be some raindrops. We cannot see it on the camera lens.
And you can see them right there as everybody's heading for the pit area. Once the leader heads in, everybody's going to head in, and you can see some, look at the green area over there, you can see some raindrops coming down. So if this continues, or if it comes down much harder, it's a chance they could red flag this race.
So you take a look there at the pit stop under yellow. So not quite as imperative to have a quick stop, just a good clean stop under yellow. The Penske crew the first in and the first out, and there's Jill DeFerrin, Elio Castroneves, and Sam Hornish. So with some raindrops falling, as we indicated earlier in the broadcast, it's not uncommon to have rain sometime about every afternoon out here in the Rockies.
These are huge drops. You can see them on the screen there. Huge drops. Robbie Buell.
Indications just coming off of 4 there, and just something let go. You get to a certain point when you're like, what did we do to deserve this? We just can't seem to keep things together, and it's no reflection of the Purex of Venice guys. I mean, it's one of those deals, and you get tired of saying that. But we just got to keep working, and it will come to us eventually, but it is frustrating, to say the least.
I'm judging from what I see the moisture out of the back of the car and not raindrops, and it is starting to rain now. This is not something that can be repaired or get you back out at all?
No, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done, and you just wonder how long it can continue, because we got a good group of guys, we got good backers, and with Purex and Event, and it just... I'm where I throw my hands up right now.
He's at the mercy of somebody, and he wishes it wasn't that way, Bob.
Well, right now he's also at the mercy of Infinity, because he will lose his power plant next season. Have to make a decision on which power plant he'll be utilizing. As you look at the raindrops on our onboard camera, riding now with Jeff Ward.
Those are actually some hailstones coming down too, so the weather's turned bad in a hurry right here. As you can see, we're having some technical difficulties with the in-car cameras. Wow, look at that. Look at the hailstones coming down.
Look at the hailstones. They're showing Billy Boat out in front right now on the scoring monitor. Boat did not make a pit stop. He started dead last. The red flag, to no one's surprise, is going to be displayed with the hail falling over Pikes Peak International Raceway. We have seen rain out here in the past, but I don't recall seeing hail out here.
No, but you can see the fans in the stands are heading for covers. It is hailing, and looks like huge hail, and that stuff hurts you when it hits. Man, oh man, you can see the racetrack already very, very wet. They've got, red flag is out. They had no choice. The racetrack is way too wet. These slick tires, you just can't keep these cars out there, even at slow speeds when it's this bad out. So they're going to have to take them in, get some covers on the cars, and come out and try to dry this racetrack off.
Unlike Formula One, these guys do not have treaded tires to go to. They do not run on an oval in the rain. So with it slick like this, there's no tread. The red is out, and this race has been stopped.
It certainly has. So while we get a chance to see what happens back there, we'll catch our breath here in the studio. With me, Christian Colby and Paul Cherry, of course. Christian, a nightmare situation there from hail on the track. Of course, it was in the UK. We'd be used to it, but seeing as it is in Colorado, they're perhaps not quite used to it as bad as that. What's going through a driver's mind at that time? We're only 34 laps into this race. What's going to go through the driver's mind?
I mean, when he sees the raindrops, he's pretty certain he knows the procedure and it's going to get red flagged and the race is going to get stopped. And for him, it's just a long break. I don't think none of the drivers are really going to panic. Gilles Ferrand might be a little bit annoyed. He was looking good, looking really strong. Both the Penske cars were looking very strong. But
is it an opportunity to catch up on the car, to change the car, giving you a little bit longer here now, or is the racetrack going to change that much once it's had some rain on it? Is it going to be a completely different scenario after all the week of testing they've done, getting to where they are at the minute?
It very much depends how the week's been panned out, but yes, the rubber will get washed off and there won't be as much rubber, so the track will have changed quite significantly. So to go and change your car now might be a little bit dangerous, so they might try and set the car up a little bit conservative, trying to give the car quite a lot of understeer to make sure that it's at least not going to get loose on them and oversteer into the wall.
Well, I can tell you now, it's absolutely chucking it down with rain there, and this race is going to be stopped for a moment or two. But having said that, there's a big, big sunny gap in the clouds just over the hill from here. So, and the wind's blowing as well, so maybe it won't be so long. But having a look at that, it looks pretty awful to me. Paul Cherry, is this where team managers and team owners' hair goes grey?
Absolutely, but at least it gets a rinse through. The weather out there goes like that. You get a massive storm and it comes across and it's quickly over, and the humidity there, it'll suck it all up pretty quick. So I don't think we'll have too much longer to wait.
What about these cars? I mean, obviously they don't run them in the rain. I put the question to Christian. You've obviously been involved from the other side of the fence slightly. I mean, obviously the track is going to change to a certain extent. The track temperature, I would imagine, is going to drop a lot with this hailstorm that we're having at the moment. What's a team do? What's a team working like at this moment in time for the top runners?
It's basically a lot of guesswork now because, as you've rightly said, these guys have been running on this for 2 or 3 days. There's a fair bit of rubber put down, the line's pretty clean and it's got a fair amount of adhesion. But what's going to happen is, as we said, the rain will come and wash that and change it. But what you do, that's going to be a big guess, and that's driver's feel and feedback's going to say that. I think the next time we have some pit stops when this goes green, we're going to see a lot of changes at those pit stops.
Again, maybe it comes down to data. We talk extensively about data and what the more experienced and the longer running teams, like Captain Roger Penske, for instance. I mean, he's got to have a lot of data stacked up his sleeve. Are they going to be in the better position when it comes to restarting this?
Sure, you can't help but monopolise if you've got a lot of data, but the tyre technology changes week in, week out. These guys find a different compound, the whole thing changes in a matter of seconds, and it's the tyres that ultimately that are touching the track, quite obviously, and that's the thing that's going to give the driver the feel, and people are going to either want more wing or less wing or different ride heights. It's anybody's call.
So Christian, as a driver, just he's out of the cab now, he's wandering around. What's he nipped to the back of the bike sheds and has a quick cigarette or something? What's the story now for them?
It depends how long the break is going to be. You'll probably go and sit in a motorhome and try and relax. And
how do you keep focused?
That's the difficult bit, and that's where you're going to find out who's been kept focused. But it's very much you're building yourself up for a second start. You're building you up for a new race. You pretty much scrap whatever's happened so far, and you start from fresh. With regards to the setup, I think most people will probably go back to how they started when they came first in the week. The track was first green on the first practice session, and that's probably how they're going to look at the conditions now. Well,
we're certainly winding ourselves up for a second start, that's for sure. We're going to take a short break now. Hopefully when we come back we might have some racing for you. Welcome back. Well, after a hailstorm in Colorado, we had the sun come out through the clouds, the track dried out, and out back onto the track went the cars behind the pace car. So we can rejoin the action now at Pikes Peak.
And there's a great shot off the front bumper of the Corvette, the 50th anniversary Corvette. Johnny Rutherford, we speak of John, who's a 3-time Indy 500 champion, is a driver coach now and a IRL official driving the pace car. Back on board with Scott Sharp. Sharp will restart in the 6th position. He has some 7 victories now in the Indy Racing League. That is second only to Buddy Lazier.
I'm interested to see if that was an engine problem with Scott Sharp or my ears were playing tricks on me. It sounded like that engine was not running on all 8 cylinders, but maybe I was just wrong.
There is the restart order. As we have documented, Billy Boat was told to stay out, not make a pit stop. So as the rains came and the red flag was displayed, He was in front. These other drivers directly behind him have made their first pit stop, but as you heard one of the drivers say, this is still a 2 pit stop race. There is Buddy Lazier who now will restart well back in the pack, back around 17th position. A former winner here, a former champion of the Indy Racing League, but it's been a tough season for Lazier. Been involved in a couple of crashes.
Yeah, it has been a tough year for him. He's they just really haven't got on the mark this year. No real reason. They can't put their finger on it, but they have not done everything that it takes to win races. And this is a tough league to win races in right now.
Well, he's 11th right now in the point standings. You look back at Scott Sharp, the winner at Nazareth, when DeFerrin ran out of fuel on the final lap.
Yeah, that engine does sound much better right there than it did a little earlier.
Just listening to the engine there, yeah, it does sound okay.
Scott, you know, bit Susie just let the grip over.
You heard some communications between Scott and the team.
He said it sounds pretty clean. I think he did have a miss in it. I think maybe there might have been some moisture or something in there and he got it cleaned out. Now it's running okay, so that's a good sign for him.
But I'm wondering, well, the pace car is coming off the track. We should get a restart this time by.
And there is a certain spot on the racetrack. They're not supposed to pick the throttle up until they get to that point. Everybody else looked like is on the throttle a little bit before Billy Boat was.
Well, we're being told now those 2 yellows did count. They have counted the yellows, so 37 laps are now completed. All of a sudden,
Hornish tries to go to the outside of DeFerrin. DeFerrin was also moving up. You see Hornish had to get out of the throttle.
We're getting some questions answered right now on whether Boat could lead this thing. And right away, he's gone from first to third in 1 lap, and here comes Hornish on the inside to try to take the 3rd position from Billy Boat.
Well, those 3 cars, the 2 Penske cars and Sam Hornish, were the dominant cars up to the red flag, and it doesn't appear that things have changed very much.
Well, they're taking it easy the first couple of laps because of the green racetrack conditions. That last lap for Castronova, it's 159.9 miles an hour. That's about 7 or 8 laps or miles an hour off what he had been running before the red flag. And look at this. The Penske cars are side by side.
Well, those guys don't mind mixing it up as they go after each other here. Right now, it appears that DeFerrin has gotten to the inside of Castroneves and is going to take the lead.
And they run nose to tail on lap 41, and now he looks to the inside. And once again, I'm not sure the captain likes this what he's seeing right now.
Castroneves pushed the front end. He had to get out of the throttle as the front end headed towards the left rear of DeFerrin, and if he hadn't got out when he did, he was going to make some contact. That would not be good.
There is just a huge crowd here this afternoon, and they have endured a hailstorm and a lengthy delay.
There are 2 more teammates right now. Scott Sharp under Al Unser Jr.
No, that's
I'm sorry, that's Radon. You're right.
That's the MyJack car. That's Radon. Unser right now in 6th position. Laurent Radon in 7th, and you're riding in 8th position with Jeff Ward. Now this is a good shot right here at that battle up in front of him. Ward, he has to have just a ton of confidence this week after that show last week in Texas.
Well, and he should. This team has come together very well. Radon all over Al Unser Jr. down on the inside, and you can hear Ward. He just barely touched the rev limiter at the end of that front straightaway. That means he's got almost a perfect gear in that car.
Well, Unser, right there. Oh, he hit the rev limiter right there. You could hear it.
But that's not all bad because it only hits it for just a second at the end. That means that he's getting every RPM he can get out of that thing. The same thing down the back straightaway. Just for a second is he hitting that rev limiter.
Running right together on the racetrack. That is 6th, 7th, and 8th. Al Unser, Laurent Radon, and Ward. And then Cheever is right behind this trio in that number 51 Red Bull entry back in 9th position. There's Cheever looking over this good battle right in front of him. He sounded pretty confident when we heard him tucked away in the cockpit earlier.
Yeah, he wasn't panicking. He knew they were ways back in the pack right now, but there's still a long way to go. They've got a lot of laps to go, and he knows he's got a long way, he's got a lot of time to catch these guys.
A lot of laps and at least 2 pit stops to make.
Exactly.
You're right along with Al Unser Jr. Once again, Al is in 6th position, and once again being pressured, being challenged on the inside by the MyJack entry. This is Radisson with the Infinity Power. And he likes that good tight line on the inside. Looks like he has the pass.
Yeah, this time he made it work as Allinger Jr. just couldn't keep him back there. He did it for 2 or 3 laps. He tried very hard and kept him back for about 3 laps, but in the end, Radisson.
Well, you know that Jeff Ward was watching this. Now, if Jeff's car will run down low, he knows he can get by uncertain.
Well, obviously that's the key. You've got to.
Oh, look at this. There goes Cheever.
Cheever had good reason to be
around
confident.
Ward, and he picks up a position. He is now 8th. Ward drops to 9th. Sharp is 10th. Dismore on that restart is all the way back to 11th. Great restart for Mark Dismore.
Yeah, he just scored back in about 18th position on the restart, so he's passed a lot of cars here in the early going of this.
So you heard him say it was a lucky stroke that they had that red flag that could change the ignition on that race car, and boy, he is on the move.
These top 3, though, have pulled out to a good lead over everybody else in the field, and already they're coming up on John Herb to put him another lap down.
You saw Radisson make that pass for position. On that lap, he was the fastest driver out there at over 170 miles an hour. Well, right now we're seeing DeFerrin clocking in at 170.4, so they're running laps now faster than they were before the red.
Well, that probably some of that rubber got washed off. It might not be a bad thing because the rubber might have been made a little slicker out there than it was or it is now.
Well, Hornish goes around John Herb, who is now 3 laps behind the leaders, and he is directly behind Castro-Nevitz.
You can see in that shot right there, when you get too close to the car in front of you, it takes the air off the front of the car and the front end goes out. Every time you hear him lift, that's because the front end is pushing out, going towards the wall, so he has to get out of the throttle and let him go.
Now, is it the very same effect here with the lighter air that would happen on a different racetrack?
Yes, it's basically the same sort of an effect. You know, the downforce is a little less here, the horsepower is a little less, but still the same exact feeling inside that race car when that front end goes away and the head's struck toward the fence.
Dare, Lazaro, and no, wait a minute, that's the 11 car of Ray.
I believe that's Alex Barron right behind him. So
Ray is still a lap off the pace.
Right.
Alex Barron in number 44.
Trying to get around Greg Ray. Greg Ray's still obviously having some problems.
Barron is now being shown in the 12th position, trying to put Greg another lap down. And look at this.
Comes Richie Hearn right behind him.
Richie Hearn to the inside of Ray.
That's Dare, Greg Ray's teammate.
So the 2 Foyt cars are right together on the racetrack, the 2 purple and yellow. And Dare looks to make it 3 wide to the corner, and he does so. And Hearn says, okay, fine, if you want that, go ahead. You want that corner more than I do.
Yeah, he didn't want it that bad. He decided to go ahead and let Dare have it. Dare did make the pass.
It's a gutsy move this early in the race, though, to go 3 wide.
Well, they're far enough back that they have to do some of that thing. They can't afford to get lapped. Dare wants to get up to where he's not going to be in position to get lapped.
Well, there are some position changes from the start of the race. Boat, a little deceiving there. He's picked up 17 positions, running 6th right now, but he was leading on that restart. So he picked up 23 positions.
Right. Cheever actually has probably passed more cars than anybody else on the racetrack during actual racing conditions.
Well, Dismore's doing a pretty good job, too. Because Dismore restarted about 17th or 18th, and they're showing him in 11th right now.
Right. And you can see the 2 Penske cars and Sam Hornish working their way through traffic, and all 3 of them
just went a lap down.
All 3 of those guys not having a lot of problems right now.
Mack is about to go a lap down. So DeFerrin continues to lead after 57 laps. There's the green flag race average. We've had 3 leaders and 3 lead changes. Only 1 caution.
You can see that Hornish right now concentrating on keeping these 2 Penske cars. This has developed into quite a rivalry between Penske's and Team Panther for this championship lead. Now we're taking a look at Giafone, who's out there trying to hold off Billy Boat as Billy Boat kind of comes to life again and heads back up after Giafone.
That's the battle for 5th position. And
right.
then there's Cheever right behind Boat. So Cheever is probably the one of the fastest drivers out there right now.
Yeah. Cheever is one of the fastest, at least in this group, as he's running not quite as fast as the 3 front runners, but much faster than anybody else.
It'll be interesting, Larry, to see what happens at season's end. There has been some talk that this might be Eddie's last season as a driver. He's never really tipped his hat on that or kept his cards close to the vest. But there's some indication that, and certainly with Infinity going away, that this could be his last season as a driver.
Well, a lot of that will depend on what kind of a deal he strikes with an engine manufacturer for next year. If they want a 2-car team and they want him to be a part of it, I'm sure he'll continue to drive. But if they have something else in mind, he's going to be a car owner. He's going to stay in this league, and he's going to stay involved in motorsports. But he'll stay involved in however it takes for him to be involved. And if it's being a driver next year, I believe he will. But if they have some other ideas or somebody else they want to drive, then I think he'll do that too.
Look at Boat pull up on the rear. Is that the Tory car? And Boat looks to the inside as they're trying to put a lap on Shigeaki Hattori.
Oh, he did a good job.
He just set him up and went on by.
Giafone got out of the throttle. He kind of used Giafone. I thought was going to use that lap car as a pick, but he got out of the throttle when Boat got underneath him.
Boat used him as a pick.
Yeah, exactly. Boat did a good job there in the traffic, and now then Giafone's got to worry about Eddie Cheever.
So Boat has moved back to 5th. Giafone drops to 6th, and he's right there in the grasp of the 51 of Cheever. Now a lap car between those two as Cheever will try to go on by, and Hattori gets very close to the outside wall as Cheever goes by.
That's Al Unser Jr. coming up right behind Eddie Cheever, so he's in this mix all of a sudden right after these guys.
I think this is a better racetrack than we had before the rain delay.
Seems to be. Now Sharp.
Look at this. Sharp looks to the inside. Now you go back on board with Hornish.
Oh!
Hornish.
Wow, that was a great save.
Little oversteer there.
We've seen Sam Hornish save that car on several occasions, and that's one of them.
We're riding with him when he did it that time.
Man, oh man, when you get that car that far out of shape and you keep going, you've done a terrific job of driving a race car. And right there, he did a great job to keep that thing out of the wall.
That's a young, brave race driver.
And very good reflexes on that race car driver.
Well, like I said, he's a young, brave race driver. The reflexes tend to go as you get older. He's only like 24, 25.
That was unbelievable. As that thing appeared like he was just going to slam it right into the wall, he hung on to it and just kept on trucking.
Well, your leader's up on traffic now as once again DeFerrin continues to lead. He won his 2nd pole position in qualifying yesterday. Had the race won at Nazareth, and they gambled on fuel, and he lost that race in the last lap to Scott Sharp. Whoa, very close there.
Yeah, that's he's really taking some chances, but he's got his teammate right behind him, and then Sam Hornish right behind him.
As you ride with Sam Hornish Jr. back there in 3rd position, you can glance up at the sky and for the
somebody's right in front of him.
The Hornish car, and who was that?
It was either. No, that's Lazaro.
That's Lazaro in the 55 car.
Yeah, that's Anthony Lazaro. He and Richie Hearn had just gotten lapped by the 2 Penske cars, and he was going through turn number 2. The back end just got away from him. Man, was Hornish lucky that that car stayed up against the fence and did not come off of the fence, because if it had, it would have collected him big time. Sam Hornish, I'm sure, is telling his guys, man, we just dodged a big bullet right there.
Well, that's the 2nd yellow of the afternoon. The first for a crash. The first was for some oil on the racetrack. As you see, Lazaro is okay. He climbs out. He nods, yes, I'm okay. Now we're seeing that as a 3rd caution now. Actually, the 2nd was for rain. So the first caution was for the oil on the track. The 2nd was for the rain.
You can see, look at the black mark from Hornish's. We're trying to listen to what he was saying, but you can see the black mark on Hornish's car as he was hard on the brakes and turning that car. Another good job by Sam Hornish to keep himself out of trouble.
Welcome back. We're under yellow at the Pikes Peak International Raceway. Anthony Lazzaro finding himself up against the wall. And with some of the manoeuvres that's been going on out there, Paul Cherry, I'm surprised we haven't had a few more of that. There's been some very, very close calls indeed. Yeah,
there's been a lot of dicing and a lot of catching it, which is pretty unusual on an oval track. Once it gets away, it's generally gone.
It's one of those things that is going to happen on an oval. It's going to happen when anybody's pushing it up. They just get out of the groove, up the hill a little bit. Then what happens?
I mean, if you just get on the marbles, that's it. You pretty much have it. I think the only person that's managed to save it has been
Sam Hornish.
Sam Hornish, yeah. But I mean, he's done it a few times now, and it looks like he's obviously got it under control doing it. It's awesome racing. But I mean, Lazzaro just seemed to lose it just before there and backed it on into the wall and hit it pretty hard in the end. But it's good to see that he walked out of it.
Well, De Ferran leads from his teammate Castro Neves. Then you've got Hornish, of course, the save of the day so far from him. But then Laurent Redon, who's going particularly good. You know a bit about him, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, he's driving for Conquest, which team I raced for last year, and he's doing a great job in the car. They've got the Infinity engine, which really seems to be powering up there, and they seem to have had a good package to get put together. They've very secure financially with the part of the MyJack and Redon's own backing, and they're really, really going well.
Mind you, he's going to have to do some work to catch up with Penske's two boys. I mean, those two side by side for many a lap. Incredible, really. I mean, Roger Penske possibly wouldn't be too happy about seeing these two cars quite that close.
Those two guys definitely race not as teammates but as potential winners, and I'm quite sure Roger was on the horn there saying, okay, let's save the racing for the last 5 laps.
Well, we'll find out a bit more about that in a moment. Of course, the race got going again. We had a restart, and we're sitting on Sam Hornish's car here, and sadly I have to tell you that rain just started to come down again. And while it came down, we found this man, number 16, John Herb, up in the wall, and we end up with another yellow flag. So a nice, gentle little slide down the wall there, number 16 out of it. I mean, this stop-starting, Christian, from a driver's point of view, surely doesn't do them any good. I mean, they must really be frustrated by the time it gets to this stage. But it's an awkward day, isn't it?
I mean, it is an awkward day for the drivers, but as much for the team. I think they're trying to rethink the strategies. The drivers is there, and he's just concentrated on doing his job. I think the people that are happy about it are people that are able to get back a lap, you know, and perhaps able to take advantage out of it all. And the people that are going to be annoyed are people like De Ferran and Castro Neves, and because they just seem to be controlling the race.
Well, it's the 4th caution of the day. You've got to say, John, Paul, sorry, that was a very gentle. He got himself, like you said earlier on, Christian, up on those marbles, and he just couldn't do anything about it. He just drifted to the top of the wall.
Unfortunately, I mean, this is John Herb, and John's a nice guy, but he is a back marker perennially, and he's good. He looks in his mirrors and he gets out the way of the leaders, but the trouble is you then make the mistake of getting too high up, and as Christian said, you know, you get on the marbles, you're out of control. So sometimes you're trying to be safe, but you create more danger.
Back marker's always a problem. I mean, we've seen quite a few being cut through by the leading trio at the moment. How difficult is it to pass in these circumstances?
I mean, it's difficult. Generally, the back markers are pretty good with the mirrors. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lapse of concentration, so the leaders just need to bear that in mind. But they seem to be not have been a problem so far, and the race has gone well, and it certainly hasn't been the fault of the back markers that any of the yellows have happened so far. Well,
they're all back in it in just a moment or two. We're going to take a very short break. We'll be back racing in just a couple of minutes. We're under our 4th caution of the day for the Radisson Indy 225 in Colorado, but they're about to come back under green, so let's rejoin the boys at trackside.
Look at that. There's the furl flag indicating one more lap. Brian Howard has the green flag in hand, and that means, Larry, in one lap, when they complete lap 115, we'll go back to racing. And so we'll have 100 laps to go.
Yeah, and these guys are still going to have one pit stop to make. Everybody's going to have to make one more pit stop, whether it be green flag or yellow flag. Let's see if anybody can pull anything off on these restarts most of the time. Whoa!
What was this?
Looked like everybody got on the throttle a little bit. And
that's the old brake check. They call that brake checking. Yeah. Sprint car racing.
De Ferran just wasn't ready to go yet.
Well, here comes the restart. They're going too wide in some cases. The brought on the inside, and that was Giafoni on the high side. Again, a good restart for DeFerrin. Looked like DeFerrin started to the throttle and backed out of it. Kind of checked up a bit.
Well, they did a good job because that could have been a disaster. If those two guys had touched up in front, they were going to take a lot of race cars with them.
Scott Sharpride's back in the 8th position. Looks to the inside of his teammate, Al Unser, and goes on by.
Well, he certainly did. He never even looked twice. He just got out on the inside, kept on trucking, and Al Unser Jr. had to give him room. Now they're Ward.
Now keep in mind, they see the sky. We could have a completed race that would end early, so that is going to change some strategy right here.
Yeah, everybody's going to
want to run back in 3rd and 4th position. You want to be up in front.
Exactly, and they want to get there as quickly as they can, so you might see some guys running a little harder than maybe they would at some other time. That's Cheever following Ward right there. Ward's still right on that rev limiter.
On the rev limiter. Ward back there in 9th position. Cheever is now 10th. Dare is 11th. There's Dare in that purple and yellow, number 14, the Harris car for A.J. Foyt. Less than a half second separating 1st and 2nd. On the reviter, on the rev limiter again.
Cheever tries to run down below him. He tries to run down in that very low groove to keep that air on the front wing of his car, but doesn't seem to be able to make much headway right there.
DeFerrin continues to show the way as you watch that battle back there between Ward and Cheever. Ward with Chevrolet power in the Target Ganassi car, and then Red Bull number 51 has the Infinity power plant.
Yeah, Ward is one of the few guys out here that...
Look at this, a battle for 2nd position.
Oh, you can see him reach down and grab another gear, too. He shifted gears right in the middle of that corner, right in the middle of that where he's trying to pass. We've seen him do that and make passes before. We'll see if it works this time for him.
Well, we said that Sam Hornish needs a good race here this afternoon. He's trying for 2nd position right now. He needs to get back up in the point standings. He's right now 3rd behind those 2 Penske cars, and with rain in the area, well, he doesn't want to be riding 2nd or 3rd.
And Castroneves just won't give in, but he finally had to. As Sam Hornish had the momentum off the corner, he took that position away. Now we'll see if Castroneves has anything to keep up with him.
Well, we've mentioned before that Sam Hornish has a Indy veteran as his spotter in Pancho Carter, former Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a former midget sprint and Silver Crown titleist. And he's on the headset. In fact, Pancho's son was racing the Silver Crown Series out here this afternoon.
And look at Laurent Redon back there in that 2nd yellow car. He is right behind those 4 cars, all 4 of them doing a great job. And Giafoni not far behind those 4.
Well, the top 3 have Chevrolet power plants behind the cockpit. 4th place is the Infinity.
Fantastic driving in from Sam Hornish, right in there now, into 2nd place and closing in on Gil DeFerrin. Got to say, Sam Hornish, he loves this place. His form is superb. We've already seen how confident he is in the car. I mean, he's been saving himself brilliantly earlier on. Can he do it from where he is at the moment, do you think?
Oh, for sure. He's in with a shout all the time. I mean, he's not intimidated by the Penskes at all, who are doing a superb job. And as you saw with Castroneves, he'd got nothing in reserve, so he just ultimately had to give way. So, yeah, he's in a good position.
Christian, a lot of people are on the rev limiters on the moment on these cars. I mean, they've got another gear to go, I presume, that they've got very, very short top gears, haven't they? But they seem to be just happy to be sitting on the rev limiter at the end of these straights.
Yeah, I mean, the prime example is Jeff Ward at the moment. He just seems to be buzzing that limiter every time he turns into the corner. We saw Sam Hornish was just shifting the gear every now and then, but the engines seem to produce the most horsepower just before the limiter, so they like to run them really close or as near the limiter as they possibly can do. So that's why you're seeing quite a lot of people just buzzing that limiter.
Remarkable that they do produce all that horsepower right at the very end of the rev range. I mean, it's one of those situations where, you know, most people want a bit of torque somewhere, but is that a motor that's basically tuned specifically for oval racing where it's flat out all the time?
Yeah, exactly. The engine is just for going flat out. You need a little bit of torque to get you out of the pits, but ultimately you need it right at the top of the rev range, and they max out at 10.3 and they're probably peak powers 10.250.
Okay, Penske's 2 cars have been split now, Christian, by Sam Hornish. Hornish, he's a bit... Do you think he might have a little bit of a reputation, not quite a Thomas Scheckter reputation, where, you know, it's going to be through the fence if I don't get my way, but is Sam Hornish an aggressive enough driver to actually make these 2 Penske boys think about what they're doing around him?
Oh, definitely, they're worried. There's no doubt about it. He's a tough driver and he really likes to get in there. He generally seems to have not hit the wall that much this year, I don't think, and he seems to have done a really good job. He won a championship last year, so you can see that he's able to string it together consistently to put together a championship effort. And he's the established championship. The two Penske drivers are the new kids on the block in the Indy Racing League, at least, and they're fighting for us as much as anything.
Well, the battle continues at Pikes Peak. We can now rejoin the action in Colorado.
Scott Sharp back in the 8th position. Alex Barron in front of him. So you're looking right there in that red, white, and blue car in 6th. And had it not been for a couple of yellows late in the Indy 500, Alex Barron could have won that race.
He had a very good chance. He had great pit strategy going and could have made it to the end. He was the only car in a position to run to the end. But once the yellow came out there, he was kind of took that victory away from him.
Well, back on board, you saw a little Al shift gears there too.
Yeah, when you get, that's the one thing you have to be able to do. You have to run a couple of top gears. Sometimes when you're in the draft, you need a different one than you do when you're by yourself. So you've got to run at least 2 different top gears. These are 6-speed gearboxes, and you've got to run at least 5th and 6th gear, both as top gears.
Well, only 3 drivers are out, so we still have 20 cars on this racetrack.
Now then these first 4 coming up on some lap traffic again as all of a sudden DeFerrin, somebody got very close to the wall.
Hattori got very close to the wall. And that number 12 cars, they all motor by. Hattori stays out of the way and Shigeaki goes a lap down, but he had to hold his breath there as he stayed up high and let those guys go.
Yeah, I think he feels pretty fortunate to still be on the racetrack after he got way up near the fence as those lap cars were heading towards him.
A lap car between 1st and 2nd. Is that the...
I think that was George Mack that they just went around.
Mack.
But looks like, you can see Sam Hornish, he's messing, that's the weight jacker. He's down there changing the sway bar, or the weight jacker, down there on the race car, trying to change the handling a little bit. He's not exactly happy with exactly the way the car's going around the racetrack, so he changes the sway bar just slightly.
You know, that was Lazier they just went around to put Lazier 2 laps off the pace. So I tell you what, this Himmelgarn team is either on top or they're really struggling. There seems to be no middle ground with Lazier and the Himmelgarn team.
Well, remember, they won this race last year. That led to 4 straight victories. They certainly would like to have something like that come along again, but it's not going to start here at Pikes Peak today, I can tell you that.
Well, you see that gap that has opened up between 1st and 2nd, as now that is George Mack that your leader is about to place another lap down. And he scoots on by George Mack. And here comes 2nd place trying to close in.
When you're in traffic like that, it does give the other cars an opportunity to close in on you. But right now, DeFerrin seems to be right on top of the game. He is the fastest car on the racetrack, even though he wasn't on the last lap because of the lap traffic.
You're right with Sam Hornish as he goes to the inside of George Mack, trying to put George a lap back. And now that battle closes in on the 6th position. Alex Barron. And wait a minute, that was Unser that just went around Sharp. So Unser just went around his teammate as we're watching the teammates battle for position. We kind of kept an eye on Alex Barron there, and all of a sudden Unser comes around Sharp and starts to close in on Barron.
Yeah, we were watching those 2 guys, and all of a sudden, Al Unser comes up and takes over the lead, or that position.
.136 laps now complete. And now it starts to get interesting. Little Al now starts to show some ponies as he moves around his teammate Scott Sharp and moves into 7th position. And tries to get up close enough to challenge Alex Barron, but Sharp stays on his rear deck.
Yeah, Sharp trying to recoup a little bit. I think he had to get out of the throttle a little bit when he's right up behind Barron. When he did, it just gave Al a little extra momentum. Now then, he's going to take a shot at Al Unser as it goes 3 abreast.
As they go by Lazier.
Boy, see, that's a case where Little Al that time had to lift ever so slightly when he came up on the lap traffic. And once you lift, even if it's just for a half a second or an instant, you do lose some RPMs and you lose some momentum, and it gives that guy behind you who did not lift just that extra little burst of speed to get on around you.
Well, Well, so you watch them run now almost nose to tail for 6th, 7th, and 8th. Ward is back in 9th. Cheever is 10th. Now here comes Scott again.
You can see he had a notion. He wanted to try to get to the inside, but he wants to make sure he's got enough room down there. If he doesn't, he's going to lift out of the throttle, which he did right there, and let him have that inside line.
Yeah, if he lifts in the throttle, little Al's coming by on the inside.
He did lift it ever so slightly right there, but Al's probably in the same position because, oh, now then he's got a good run on him.
To the inside, he makes the pass. That's the way you talk about it. If you're doing a driving school, you set him up down the straightaway and dive under the corner.
Well, it doesn't come much more like the textbook than he did it just right there.
Let's see if Al can do the same thing here as he comes off the corner. That's not exactly the spot to pass. You want to pass him going in. Some good racing throughout the pack here at Pikes Peak International Raceway. We're watching that battle now for 7th position. Alex Barron in the red, white, and blue number 44. That is Al Unser Jr. in the red, white, and black number 7 as Al looks to the inside.
Just not quite enough momentum. Didn't have quite enough room. So he tried to sneak in there, couldn't do it. And got out of the throttle and let Alex Barron go.
Well, Scott Sharp has gotten around both of these drivers, so he's up in 6th position.
That's Giafone right in front of him is Scott Sharp. All of a sudden, this car, the more laps he runs, the better it seems to be handling, as he's one of the 4 or 5 fastest cars on the racetrack right now.
Well, you see the gap close down between those 2 cars as Giafone rides in 5th. Sharp is 6th. DeFerrin is still out in front, enjoying over a 2-second lead over Hornish. So you're not missing a thing at the front of the pack as we show you some good racing back in the pack. And now Sharp is closed in even closer.
Yeah,
look at this. He makes the move to the inside going into turn 1. And he should make the pass coming off the corner and does so.
Boy, he all of a sudden has got things going his way. And I'm not sure whether he made some changes in the cockpit or it's just because of the lighter fuel load. They've gone 72 laps now since the last pit stop, so they're going to have to be heading toward the pits for a green flag pit stop.
He's got the riding crop up when he's going for
that's exactly
the
right.
stretch drive right now.
Now look at DeFerrin. Now he's coming up on Greg Ray.
Greg Ray has to be totally frustrated. Here's a guy that has won more pole positions than anybody else in this league. He's a former champion. Has a number of wins, but yet has just not found the right combination since joining A.J. Foyt.
And you can see some of these cars beginning to drop off. That may be that Carvatore. He may be out of fuel. Who knows? They're getting to the point where they are going to have to start thinking about it.
They're in the fuel window right now. There goes Lazier, another lap down.
Boy, he's just having an awful day out here, isn't he?
They've gone 74 laps since the last pit stop. Now keep in mind that they had that prolonged yellow.
Yeah, so they're going to be able to run several more laps. You usually get 2 yellow flag laps for every 1 green flag lap. So they ran about 10, so they can probably go another 5-6 laps, or maybe even longer than. Ooh, boy, that looked pretty close.
You're almost looking for that car to pitch just a little bit because of the contact.
Boy, the right rear had to be close when he came.
But he has open racetrack out in front of him now. That is Sharp in the 5th position. Radon is 4th. Castro Nevitz is now 3rd, and Hornish rides in 2nd.
Yeah, and Sharp is. Well, according to the last lap, he was the 2nd fastest race car on the racetrack. So we knew he had gained a lot of speed. He looked to be very quick on the racetrack. But he's definitely, other than DeFerrin, was the fastest guy out there right now.
Well, of course, things can always change. When he makes a pit stop, he takes on a new set of tires and tops off the fuel. They're 35 gallons, so there's several hundred pounds additional to the rear of that race car. And that was Schechter that he just went by. Yeah, Schechter not having a very good ride. He is 2 laps off the pace now.
Yeah, he's not having his best day. This is probably as bad as we've seen him run all year long, actually.
Well, that was a look from the number 2 car.
Yeah, that was Mark Dismore. Who just went a lap down. So.
There's Cheever. Cheever now is in the. Cheever is in 8th position.
Yeah, and some of these guys who when you run a long green flag stint like we have right now, a lot of the guys whose cars were not handling real good, they're really getting nasty right now. They're really getting gnarly and hard to handle. But boy, it certainly doesn't seem to bother DeFerrin. He just keeps running faster and faster. And Sharp is the other guy that seems to be liking these long runs on the racetrack.
Now DeFerrin slowed down on that lap because of the traffic he was going through. But still he has just over a 2-second lead, which will all evaporate either under yellow or perhaps with that pit stop coming up.
Yeah, he's maintained about that 2-second lead for the last several laps, and even through traffic and not through traffic, even when he's on an open racetrack, Hornish is not giving away a lot to him. But now look at all the traffic in front of Scott Sharp. That's Redone right in front of him.
Redone right in front of him.
So he's caught up with Redone.
So you can hear him have a battle shaping up now for 4th position. Scott Sharp having a great ride here this afternoon. And now we're hearing we have more rain.
And you can hear
out to see if we can see it across the front of the press box here.
Well, you can certainly hear Scott Sharp burping the throttle. He was in and out of that throttle a lot more than normal, but he had some really slow cars in front of him. He had to be very, very careful. But right now, if it does start raining, if it is picks up some more of this rain, they will be throwing the yellow flag shortly. And that's what these guys are waiting on. They don't want to make this green flag pit stop until they just absolutely have to.
Well, it's 83 laps they've gone now almost 84 laps since the last stop. So they are getting toward the edge of that pit window.
It's going to be a huge gamble if they stay out there very much longer. But with it sprinkling, you'd hate to be the guy that comes in and pits and the yellow flag comes out the next time by. You hate to be the guy sitting out there out of fuel, too.
Now, DeFerrin has also opened his lead up over Hornish in the last 2 laps to 3.8 seconds.
And Hornish may be thinking exactly that. I'll tone back the fuel. I'll save fuel a little bit. I'll try to make us last a little bit longer. So maybe DeFerrin will have to make a pit stop before we do, and the yellow flag will come out. So a lot of mind games going on out there. A lot of strategy being played out.
Well, right now, the guy that has the job of making all the decisions is not necessarily the guy in the cockpit, but the guy that's the crew chief in the pit lane going over all the numbers.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And if there is no yellow flag, if it doesn't rain and you've gotten yourself way behind, then you put yourself in a bad position.
Ooh, wow. It's up behind one of the Hera cars. A crash, and that's Ward. So the yellow comes out not for rain, but for Jeff Ward clouding the outside wall.
Going through turns 3 and 4, Jeff Ward just got up a little too high. You can see that happens a lot at this racetrack. If you get up into those marbles, it's very easy. Well, you're going to hit the wall at that point because there's no give up there. You can see he's knocked the right front clean off of that race car.
But he's able to drive the car back to the pit lane, so this will ensure for hopefully a short yellow if the rain doesn't prolong it.
Well, there will be some debris.
Replay shortly as you see Jeff unbuckles, takes the steering wheel off.
Yeah, there will be some debris. He hit the wall, and there will be some debris they're going to have to go out and clean up. But like you said, it won't be a long yellow flag, and all these guys will get a chance to make their last pit stop under yellow. There will be no green flag pit stops.
Hello again. It's been a demanding IRL race from Pikes Peak, of course. We've had hailstones, we've had rain, and we've had crashes, the latest of them being last week's winner, Jeff Ward, who's just found himself up in the wall. We're under caution right now. Let's go back to the track then and rejoin the action with 47 laps to go.
Well, you heard us say at the top of the show that 53% of all these Indy Racing League events have ended with less than 2 seconds between first and second. I think we'll have another close finish here this afternoon.
Well, 35% of them less than 1 second. If they keep running like this, it's going to be in that category here today.
There's less than 1 second separating first and third right now. Now 6 hundredths of a second separating first and second.
Giafoni has fallen back slightly. That's Al Unser Jr. right behind him, though. So Al Unser Jr. has kept in good contact with these front runners here after this last pit stop.
And Al starts to close in on Giafoni. So Al's having a good ride to back up that good second place finish he had a week ago at Texas.
Well, he's had good runs here before. He's not a stranger to this racetrack. He likes this racetrack, and he runs good here most of the time. And might be a good. Oh, look at this! We got lots of lap traffic. That was a Torres. All three of them made it through around him in that one lap corner.
Well, and again, depending on where that lap traffic tends to be in the final 3 or 4 laps, that could play a factor in the outcome of this race.
It certainly will. Now, DeFerrin, you notice, he pulled away a little bit when they got to that lap traffic. That's been kind of the pattern all day long. When he gets into traffic, he seems to gain a little bit of an advantage on these other two guys.
Well, DeFerrin had the race won at Nazareth. The captain gambled, ran out of fuel in the last lap, and gave the victory to Scott Sharp. But in the record book in the years to come, it won't say that Scott Sharp got that win because somebody else ran out of fuel. It'll go down as a victory.
Well, I'm sure Hornish is sitting back there in 3rd position thinking, man, oh man, these guys are tough. I've done about everything I can think to do here today. I've passed Castroneves about 3 or 4 times on the racetrack, and I still can't get in the lead. Yeah, he's
taking his hand off the steering wheel. I'm not sure where it was going. It did not go down to the gear shift. Looks like he might be, well, is he going for the belt? Maybe tightening the belt?
He could be tightening the belts, but he's right now he's concentrating very hard on what he can do, if anything, to gain a little bit of an advantage on these guys. And right now it doesn't appear that there's much he can do, as both those Penske cars are very, very quick.
We've got Scott Sharp again, riding out in front of a lapped Alex Barron. Scott Sharp in the Delphi number 8 for Team Kelly, back in the 7th position.
Yeah.
2-time Trans Am champion, a 2nd-generation driver, son of Bob, who's a former SCCA champion, and began his racing career in road racing, in sedans.
And there is Eddie Cheever.
Cheever back in 8th position.
He's the next car in line behind Sharp, and not making a great deal of a dent in that lead. I'm sure Eddie Cheever would agree that this was not their shining moment in racing, either he or Schechter here today. They've had trouble. They had trouble qualifying and haven't really got the hammer on.
Schechter's not been a factor. In fact, he's 2 laps off the pace. He's back in 16th position.
And probably the first time we've said that all year long, because he has been a factor in every race. That's right. And Cheever as well. He's been up front and a factor.
But give this team credit, because they have wrecked a race car, I think, at every event this season. They've had some in practice as well. So they've had about 8 wrecked race cars that this team keeps putting back together.
Well, a lot of midnight oil burned in that shop this year. You can bet on that. And you're right. They've gone through a lot of equipment. Some of it their fault, some of it not their fault. But it doesn't matter. It still has to be fixed.
It has to be fixed and brought back to the racetrack.
Exactly.
With the Infinity Power Plant, Cheever back in the 8th position. The 1998 winner of the Indianapolis 500. Came to the Indy cars out of Formula One. For a long time, the only American in Formula One. Of course, Mike Landretti went over and ran for a season.
It just appears that thing is not getting through the corners quite the way he would like. It appears it's a little bit loose. He's tried to run high, he's tried to run low, and it doesn't appear to make any difference. He runs about the same speed on the racetrack no matter what he does.
I'll give you that. The last lap was 168, so he was only about a mile an hour or a mile and a half off what DeFerrin ran. 192 laps now complete of 225. And now that lead, we talked about the top 3 being separated by less than a second. Now there are 3.5 seconds between first and second. Here's the best battle on the racetrack. This is the battle for 6th position. Laurent Redon, the rookie from France, in 6th. Scott Sharp right behind him in 7th.
Well, Scott Sharp, once again, it seems like the longer they run, the longer green flag laps they run, the better his race car seems to like it. The lighter it gets on fuel, the hotter the tires get, the better off he is. And now then, he's got a pretty good run here. That lap traffic helped him out.
And that's Schechter that they're going to go by again as he makes the pass, using Schechter to slow Laurent Redon just a bit, just enough to make the pass.
Yeah, Redon he caught him at exactly the wrong spot on the racetrack, had to get out of the throttle.
And look at the gap.
Yeah. Once he got around him, he just pulled away because Redon had to get out of the throttle, and he lost a lot of momentum. 195
laps complete, 30 laps to go. And DeFerrin continues to open that gap on his teammate. Now 2.2 seconds separating first and second. There's a good look at the Red Bull entry of number 52, Thomas Scheckter, the youngest driver in today's race.
And he again has not had his best day. He's run extremely well every race we've seen him run this year. He's led almost every race he's been in, but today just
only one driver has led more laps this season than Mr. Scheckter, and that is Hornish.
And you can see right there how easy it was for Eddie Cheever to go around. That just shows you the problems that he's having, because Cheever's certainly had a lot more trouble than that all year long getting around his
teammate. Number 14. Those Foyt cars are tough to tell apart because they both have the Harris sponsorship. They're both yellow and purple.
And Dare is racing with Cheever and trying to catch him to get that position, but Cheever just hangs on.
Cheever's 8th and Dare is 9th. And there's a look at Scheckter, who is now 17th. But I tell you what, with some of the rides he's had this season, although he's been fast, he's led. A lot of races have ended with him on the sideline, so at least he's going to hopefully be able to finish this race.
Well, I'm sure that's the only thought in his mind right now, is seeing that thing get to the finish line. As you can see, Sam Hornish right now coming up on some lap traffic. No, that's Castroneves.
Oh, that's the battle for second.
Well, Castroneves had he must have run into some trouble, because he was a good ways ahead of him on the racetrack just about a lap ago, and all of a sudden Hornish just caught up with him.
We're working to turn 3, 10-degree banking.
Oh boy.
Who's that? Stay put, whoever it is. And look at this.
Yellow flag was out.
Yellow flag was out. That's our 6th yellow of the afternoon.
Greg Ray, you can see some moisture coming out the back of that car. That smoke coming out of there. They're afraid it was oil or water on the racetrack, so immediately they threw the yellow flag. If you remember at Indianapolis, they delayed throwing the yellow flag, and Tony Kanaan came around, got in the oil, and crashed
after
heavily.
Junqueira lost his engine.
Yeah.
So Ray pulls out of the fast groove, and he'll head for the pit lane. In fact, they may all head for the pit lane once they open it up. So we still have 24 laps to go, and this will bunch everybody up. But every time they've bunched up behind DeFerrin, he's been able to pull away. Last time he opened up about a 2.5-second lead over his teammate, who was in the throes of that battle for second with Hornish. So the pace car with Johnny Rutherford on board will come out, pick up your leader, Gil DeFerrin, going after his first win of the season. As you ride there again on the steering wheel, you see the yellow flashing. That gets the driver's attention. That's a great safety tool that they've added in the past couple of years.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, there's no question about whether you're in sight line of a yellow light or not, because it's right there on the steering wheel, and it does get your attention because you're looking right above that steering wheel at all the time. Plus, you're looking at the steering wheel. You're watching the telemetry on there a lot too.
Well, you saw him flex his right hand. They've been in the cockpit a long time today. They had that one break for the red, then they jumped back in the car, and for a 225 lap race, it's been a long race for them.
Certainly has, and the pits were closed now. Then they pulled that flag in, so the pits are open. We'll see if any of these guys are going to come in. I would doubt.
They would risk track position if they come in now.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see any of the first 4 or 5 drivers. If you're running 6th or 7th or 8th, then maybe you'll want to come in. But the first 3 or 4 guys, I don't think can risk going in and making any changes.
Be a single file restart, and there is George Mack. So we have 1 lap car between first and second, and here comes Scheckter. I mean, he has nothing to lose by making a pit stop, nor does Lazier. So as you indicated, the guys at the back of the pack have nothing to lose by making these stops, and may be able to pick up a position or 2 with some new tires.
Yeah, if you're if you're Eddie Cheever, he's one of the last guys on the lead lap. You might want to come in, but he didn't even make a pit stop, so you're not going to see anybody in front of him make a pit stop at this point.
Dismore still a lap back now in 10th position, but still this will be a pretty good ride for the Team Menard organization this afternoon, and hopefully that will stabilize that racing program until they get Jacques Lazier back. And you know, if Dismore does a good job, John Menard's the kind of guy that would say, okay, let's run 2 cars. Let's bring Jacques back and let's let Mark stay.
Well, obviously that's what Mark Dismore is hoping for, and I think a lot of his fans around the country are hoping for the same thing. They think this guy deserves a good shot at a good race car in the Indy Racing League, and you know, you only get so many opportunities, and as you mentioned, he's getting on in his career. He's not going to be around for another 10 years, maybe another 2 or 3.
Of course, his son, Mark E. Dismore, was doing very well first in the 2000 series and then in stock cars, but the sponsorship went away this season. And of course, that's what makes the world go around in the world of motorsports. You got that sponsorship money.
Exactly right. That's exactly what makes the world go around. That's what makes everything go around. And if you don't have the money, you can't play the game.
Well, let's just hope that we can finish this race under green flag conditions. We saw Indianapolis end with some controversy under yellow, and that will be resolved with a hearing tomorrow in Indianapolis on that complaint or protest filed by Team Green. And we should go green, Larry, the next time by.
Yeah, you'll see the
Let's
pace
see what
car
kind
pull
of
off.
Maybe we can get a word from Greg Ray on what happened to his Harris number 11 before we go back to green. See what kind of a...
You know, we finally got the car settled down. We're going pretty quick, and we had an oil fitting brake on the back of the car. So, you know, we had a good handling car there at the end. We went a lap or 2 down early in the race, and just one of those days. I want to say thanks to EDS and AT Carney, but our day's short.
Greg, when do things turn around for you and with this AJ Foyt team?
Well, I mean, this is my 3rd race with them. We haven't got to do any testing. You know, the setups are a little bit different, and it's just getting the chemistry with everybody. But, I mean, AJ Foyt is a living legend, and I think we'll get our stuff straight, but it's going to take a little time.
Good luck to you, Greg.
Thanks.
Let's check in with Gary Gerald, who's with another living legend.
That would be Roger Penske. Roger, how do you play these last 20 laps with a question mark about the weather?
Well, I think Jill says sprinkling out there. We just want to be sure we have a dry racetrack. You know, we'd like to go to the end and race like we have to, but at the moment, it's up to Brian to make the call. Right now, we still got sprinkles.
Now, we heard you on the radio telling him earlier, conserve fuel, and then you were saying he's okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
Was there a problem
there? We
there?
were a little tight on that fuel stop, trying to be sure we didn't get beat by Harnish or Elio, but I think we're in good shape now. We can go all the way.
All right, thank you, Roger.
Okay, so even in that yellow, they were concerned with getting out first, and you heard him say that Jill has reported the sprinkles that we can see right there. So again, for the 2nd time this afternoon, a yellow has been prolonged because of some sprinkles.
Yeah, and it'll make a very interesting sprint to the finish. I'm not sure that Sam Hornish can pull very many more tricks out of the bag. He's tried a lot of things. He's tried to get great restarts. He's tried to use some traffic to his advantage. But so far, these 2 Penske cars have been pretty dominant here today. These 3 cars, the Panther plus Penske, have been absolutely the 3 dominant cars on the racetrack.
Well, keep in mind, Giafoni's been right there on the cusp. He's been right there on the edge. He's back there in 4th position, never really out of the top 5 all day. Good ride for Al Unser Jr. He is up to 5th. Scott Sharp will restart in 6th, then Laurent Redon. Eddie Cheever in 8th, 9th Dare, and then the first driver a lap down is Mark Dismore will restart in 10th.
It'll be interesting to see. I believe that's George Mack, the 2nd car up in there in your screen.
George in that silver number 31.
Right, he's the guy who's going to be the spoiler here. If he gets out of the way and lets these cars through, it's a good thing, but I'm sure that Sam Hornish is hoping that he zigs when Castroneves wants him to zag and gives him an opportunity to get around Castroneves.
You think maybe somebody from the Penske?
Yeah, we'll just have to see what happens when we get there. They talked to the spotter, and they were going to try he was going to try to go low, and then we're going to try to pass some money outside, but he said he couldn't hold his car down there, so we're going to have to go on the low side. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, talking about seeing what happens, does the Pennzoil Panther team have what it takes to get by those 2 big red machines?
I don't know. We hurt ourselves here in the pits and on the last pit stop and cost us position. It won't happen again.
Green flag, Nick.
Well, the green flag the next time by, you heard from John Barnes, and I was wondering if somebody from the Penske crew or from the Pennzoil crew went down to George Mack's crew and said, tell your boy to stay in his position, either low, high, or wherever.
I've actually seen fist fights up there with the spotters when you're trying to get one of those guys to move one way or the other. And that's the truth. I heard one guy threaten to throw another guy off the roof one time, and it gets hairy. Those spotters are just as competitive as these race car drivers are.
Well, you talk about Pancho Carter being the spotter for the Pennzoil car of Sam Hornish. There was nobody more competitive than Pancho Carter.
Oh, absolutely not. You can see Hornish tried to get a bit of a run on him back there, but it doesn't look like he did it this time.
Well, there goes Castro Neves to the inside of George Mack. That'll be up to Hornish to safely make his way by on the inside. Mack stays up high and Hornish goes by, so it's going to be a shootout now for the final 14 circuits, but I don't think anybody has anything for Gil DeFerrin.
Al Unser Jr. right there, you could hear him out of the throttle as the front end was getting away from him a little bit, as he tried to pull right up on the back of Giafoni, and now Radon comes right up behind Al Unser Jr.
Well, DeFerrin has a pair of second-place finishes this season and a third, but looks like he could be on his way to his first victory.
Yeah, and he's pulled out to a pretty good sized lead already for just one lap after the green.
Second time this season that Team Penske had the front row.
These first three cars have spread out just a little bit. Giafoni, Unser, and Radon are the three cars closest to each other here in the later stages of the race.
Well, there's 2 bonus points given to the driver that leads the most laps, and that would be DeFerrin today.
Yeah, he's been in front pretty much, well, not the whole race, but he's been up there an awful lot and seems to have had the dominant car. He was the fastest qualifier. He's been pretty dominant all day long.
He'll pick up about, with his teammate finishing second, if it finishes in this order, he'll pick up about, I think, 12 points. Coming in, he was about 44 points behind.
And Hornish is not catching those guys, so he's just kind of riding along there. Doesn't look like he's got anything for them. As you can see right there, DeFerrin has a huge lead for the slate in the race.
DeFerrin's lead is almost a second and a half right now, and back to Hornish. It's a little over 2 seconds.
Castro Neves can't keep up with DeFerrin, and Hornish can't keep up with Castro Neves. So those first 3 cars, we talked about having all these finishes between 1 and 2 seconds, but and we thought this would be another one that would be closer than 1 second, but right now it doesn't appear that that's going to happen.
217 laps, 218 now complete, working on 219, 6 laps to go.
And Hornish doesn't seem to, a lot of times your car will get faster the more green flag laps that you run.
You burn off the fuel, the car gets lighter.
Right, but it doesn't seem that that's happening with any of these 3 cars. Right after the pit stops, they're running about the same, this speed and this far apart, and nobody's been able to gain the advantage through this last run.
They've been running like this for much of the race.
Yes, they have, actually.
The top 3 in these specific positions, with DeFerrin out in front, Castro Neves second, and Hornish third.
Giafoni back and forth, Unser, and then Radon. Those 3 cars right now also running pretty much in lockstep.
Well, 5 laps to go. Again, the slower cars getting out of the way.
And the lap traffic could still play a part, as you can see right there.
McGee in 54.
Looked like DeFerrin was going to go under him, and then all of a sudden decided that he should go to the outside. His spotter probably told him that McGee was going to stay low, so he went to the outside of him.
And McGee goes down low again to let Castro Neves go by. And here comes Hornish. But even in traffic, Hornish cannot close in.
And most of those guys showing good sportsmanship. They are staying down out of the way, not giving any of these leaders any kind of a problem, but without something to help them, Hornish or Castro Neves, either one are going to catch DeFerrin.
So it will be a 1-2 finish. They started 1 and 2. They will finish 1 and 2 if they maintain these positions for 2 laps. And the lead right now is, you can see the gap on the racetrack was actually 1.25 seconds on the clock.
And they have a huge lead over everybody else on the racetrack. So these three cars, the only ones in contention, and quite honestly, DeFerrin with the white flag coming out, all he has to do is run one more lap.
Through the first corner, the 10-degree banking into turn 2, off onto the backstretch, 3-degree banking on the backstretch, into turn 3, and the dual checkered flags coming out for Gil DeFerrin as he picks up his first win this season. His teammate goes second, Sam Hornish takes third, and the captain there to receive the congratulations of his crew. So DeFerrin picks up the victory after 2 seconds and a third so far this year. His teammate pulls alongside to raise his hand in congratulatory signal. And DeFerrin heads for victory lane.
Well, that was a well-deserved victory. He was the best car on the racetrack all day long, but we've seen that happen before. Thomas Scheckter was the best car on the racetrack most of the Indianapolis 500, and he still didn't win. But he did a great job. He kept focused even through the red flag, and the car never changed. It was fast from the time the green flag fell till the checkered flag fell.
So DeFerrin takes it over Castro Nevitz, and the victory was 1.4 seconds. So with all those close victories we've talked about over the past few years, it wasn't all that close this afternoon by comparison.
No, but it was still better than that 2-second record. Yeah, that's still pretty good. You're talking about 2 seconds. That's about a quarter of a straightaway here, or half a straightaway. It wasn't very much of a lead he had.
Take a look at the unofficial results. Al Unser finishing in the 6th position. Scott Sharp soldiered home in 5th. You take a look at Ray Doan with a good ride back there in 7th position. Richie Hearn, Mark Dismore a lap down, and 11th. Richie Hearn taking the 12th position. You take a look at the rest of the field. George Mack with 13th, and Billy Boat, Lazier, Scheckter, McGee, and Ray. And you take a look at the rest of the field.
There's Robbie Buell out very early, and you can see DeFerrin, he is still going around there. He's going to relish this moment because he certainly has earned that victory.
As you take a look at the rest of the schedule, 2 weeks from now we'll be in Richmond, Virginia. So our congratulations to Team Penske and Gil DeFerrin.
Indeed, congratulations. Gil DeFerrin then picking up his first win. He didn't look like being headed at all today, did he? He just looked in a class of his own, DeFerrin.
No, he'd got the situation well under control. Penske just steamrolled that whole event. Sam Hornish put in a good effort to try and stay with them, but at the end of the race he settled for the points, which was probably a smart move.
Disappointment for me, and I was really expecting great things after the last time out. Thomas Scheckter, what happened to him, Christian?
I'm not quite sure. Neither himself or his team owner, stroke teammate, Cheever, was really anywhere to be featured. All race long, they just weren't there. They just didn't have the pace. And Penske just really seemed to be on a roll, and they were running really, really strong, and no one looked like they were going to touch him.
Paul, I've got to say, the Roger Penske comment from earlier on when we heard from him in pit lane, where he said he'd got to get Gil out in front of not only Sam Hornish, but he also mentioned Helio as well. Can you cast any light on that, why he would be so competitive in his own team?
Penske's a very fair team. They run 2 #1 cars. There's no 1 or 2, and they're both out to win. Roger runs Gilles, and Tim Cindric runs Elio. And on race day, they're a team apart. They fight each other.
As we saw throughout that race, and no doubt, as we're going to hear right now, with the race winner, of course, Gil DeFerrin.
Gil DeFerrin, congratulations, your first career victory in Indy Racing League competition.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. I mean, we've been knocking on the door, I guess, since the beginning of the year, and I'm very, very happy to have won a race. I mean, I think all credit has to go to these guys here behind us. Yeah. They really done a fantastic job throughout the weekend. My car was absolutely perfect, and I tell you, great job, Helio, too. I mean, another one, too, for Marlboro Team Penske. It's just unbelievable. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to remember Gary. You know, I mean, I've been trying to win a race for him ever since he passed away. So here it is, Gary, it's for you.
Kind of an important moment because you did lose your tire changer before the season started. Let's shift gears just for one moment and talk about the fact that right from the beginning of the season you said that Marlboro Team Penske's efforts were going to be directed towards winning the IRL championship. You now have a win, and they say that once you get one, the second, third, and fourth are so much easier.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, all I know is to try hard and to work hard with these guys, and and that's all I know what to do, you know. And sometimes the wins come, and sometimes they don't. But all I can promise you is a lot of sweat and blood.
Well, I liked what the guy said when you pulled in. Hey, there's nothing stopping us now.
I don't know about that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good affair, and he doesn't look like he's done much work either. Now, Paul, you're a part, because you've been around in the paddock for so long, just explain to us the reason why you dedicated that to Gary.
Gary's been an integral part of the Penske pit crew for a long time, and was with him right through his 2 championship years in kart. And you know, to lose a guy of that importance is fairly traumatic for anybody, because it's a pretty close-knit family when you've been together for 4 years.
A sad situation, and of course Gil there dedicating his first IRL win. Now, Christian, if I can come to you regarding this, IRL and kart, it's been the big open wheel thing. We've seen both championships today. IRL on the ovals, kart on the street circuits and ovals, Penske moving over to IRL. How much of a boost from a driving point of view do you think that gave the IRL series?
I mean, it's a massive step up in prestige more than anything. All of a sudden you got one of the greatest, probably the greatest American racing team of all time moves to the IRL. It shows that they've got faith in the series, and all of a sudden people are stepping up and saying, hey, what we're missing, what is it that we're not looking at, or what is it that we are looking at, and that is IRL, and they have a great championship, no doubt.
How political is this, Paul? I mean, again, being a team owner, team manager, but in the past, you know more about this than anybody. I mean, there's a lot of politics floating around, isn't there, between these 2 series?
Heavens above, yeah, it's quite bizarre. Tony George started the IRL for the right reasons, to get the costs down and to get everything under control and to make it a good spectacle. But as we've seen today with the announcements from kart have really taken this cost situation and gripped it by the throat and brought the costs right down, and we'll now see some good competition there. On the flip side of it, the IRL's now got Toyota and Honda in there from next year, and I already hear murmurings that people are going to complain about the prices of engines. It's going to be cutthroat, so maybe the IRL will suddenly get the kart side of things, and kart will get the IRL side. But certainly it's interesting, but there's no olive branches anymore.
Unless they're going to beat each other with them, of course. Sam Hornish is the defending champion, Christian. Very quickly, can he overcome Penske this year?
Quite possibly. He's got his work cut out. I mean, Penske are looking really, really strong, and they're going to get stronger. Remember, it's their...
Can't wait to see that. Lots to look forward to then in IRL. Our big night of motor racing comes to a close. Hope you've enjoyed some great racing here. We won't be with you next week, but the following weekend, both the IRL and kart FedEx Series are back in action. Check out the IRL starting at midnight on Saturday, June the 29th on Sky Sports 2. The second of the season's night races, this one from the track at Richmond, Virginia. Then at the other end of the day, the kart FedEx Series are switching back from their recent road courses to the new Chicagoland facility. That race will be on Sky Sports Extra, live at 8:30 p.m. But for now, thanks to my guests Christian Colby and Paul Cherry for their invaluable insight, and to you for watching. Good night.